And as we are now preparing to hear the sermon, want to invite Hildy Hendrickson and Ray Pitts to come forward for a reading that Dr. Smith has offered to us. This is a reading that was written by Marvin Chandler and that was first recited at the first Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame in 1989. And so I want to invite us into hearing this reading in preparation for the sermon. The reading is entitled, "For Those on Whose Shoulders We Are Standing." Those on whose shoulders we are standing. Those whose sacrifice has been made. Those who have gone on before us. Those whose heavy debt has been paid. Those on whose shoulders we are standing made their foundations to endure, trusted in one who could lead them, their highest dreams to secure. Those on whose shoulders we are standing struggled in the practice of their arts, silent through scorn and derision, hiding the aching of their hearts.
Those on whose shoulders we are standing never lost sight of the goal, never subverted the purpose, never relinquished the soul. Those on whose shoulders we are standing honored the truth of their claims, gave us our future with their victories, loaned us the power of their names. Those on whose shoulders we are standing bid us our work to begin, urging us gently towards our vision, showing us the prize we must win. Those on whose shoulders we are standing brighten our journey with their love, bearing us up with their witness, beneath, beside, above.
Amen.
Dr. King talks about the fierce urgency of now. The fierce urgency of now. And we are there. And we must find ways not only to acknowledge that, but to practice not being that, moving away from urgency to embracing the God of your life, the God of my life. So let us reflect for just a second, please. O thou in whose hand our breath is, show patience and judge me not according to my words of angry reproach and bitterness, wild words, flying out half meant, often from a thing in pain. For even as I chide thee and renounce thee, I know that thou must be judged by all space and all time, and not by any one man's life, least of all not by any hot and displeased words. I also know that there can be no other way for a man or a woman that they answer to truth rightly and honorably before their own soul and before you, whatever comes. This must ever stand, though seasons change and flesh protest, and circumstances cry havoc and all else but this be gone. Hold me to my course, O unknown captain. Despite wintry weather, nay, grant me courage and a true heart, that I myself may hold to myself my course. Ride with me, O God, on the waves, and speak brave words of heartening. And if I am to be engulfed, may it be my way, still set by the fixed North Star. And that's Oswald. So let us turn our minds now to the matter of the psalmist who, like many of us, has come to a dark place on his journey. No matter how many times the psalmist watches Fox News or CNN or CBS, he comes away being angry, frustrated, and mad. He cries out, "Why can't they see what's happening? Why am I still trying to understand? Why am I a believer when not to be someone who I want to be? Why can't there be better results?" The psalmist, knowing he is about to lose his mind and destroy his important relationships with people he can't agree with, he wonders what to do. And he cries out to God, "Oh Lord, you have searched me, you have known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up, you discern my thoughts from afar. You are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it altogether. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it." You might rightly ask, why didn't the psalmist go there in the first place? Why not go to the source? Why not go to the one who has always been there? But in the midst of his anger and frustration, after reading the Washington Post, why didn't the psalmist know the news would upset him? Why didn't the psalmist turn on his spirit before turning on the news? He already knew what Wolf Blitzer and Anderson Cooper were going to tell it like it is. Why didn't the psalmist find a quiet place away from the raging wind and tempest? And yet here we are, watching R. Kelly go crazy during an interview with CBS's Gayle King. The psalmist watched expectantly as Michael Cohen gave his tell-all experience with the present administration. The psalmist must have known that fake news was about to condemn him. But no, he thought he could handle all of it because he said his prayers daily. And although hesitating at times on giving respectable financial pledge during your campaign, which is about to come up, now he finds himself bereft and falls down before the God of his life. So in agony and discomfort, the psalmist decides he has spent too much of his life on the sheltered shores of white privilege. Perhaps he thought it was impossible for him to have any portion of racism or sexism or homophobia. Perhaps the psalmist thought his support of the most diverse, inclusive, and racially diverse class of newly elected Democrats to the U.S. Congress had finally given him pause to celebrate. Yay, we got diversity all over. The psalmist believed that he was safe, but did not understand he was still relying on the safety of the sheltered Presbyterian shores. He was too afraid, as the poem says, to sail his small craft out into the deep where the great ones are. You know, one of Dr. King's favorite poems was about a ship, a little boat. He said, "I'm tired of sailing my little boat far inside the harbor bar. I'd like to go out where the big ships float, out on the deep where the great ones are. Should my frail craft prove too slight for storms that sweep those billows o'er, I'd rather go down in the stirring fight than be drowsed to death by the sheltered shore." A whole lot of us are being drowsed to death by the sheltered shore. And for my Morehouse friends who are here, they remember the great Dr. Benjamin Mays, who not only taught Dr. King, but spoke at his funeral. He says, and anyone who's been at Morehouse, has gone to Morehouse, remembers Dr. Mays' interpretation of Dr. King's poem. And he says he would rather go to hell by choice than drift into heaven with the crowds. There are a whole lot of us drifting, just drifting, not anchored, afraid to sail our little boat out on the deep where the great ones are. And so we struggle, we're angry. I am so grateful for the tennis tournament going on in Indian Wells, because I get a little respite from the Post and from the New York Times and from folks fighting and shouting. Can you imagine you interview somebody who have different points of views, which we are not going to do after this service, and people are just shouting at each other. You can't hear anything. You don't know where a person stands. Or then when you do, somebody's in their face about it. They can't stand it. It's just a big mess. So I just turned to the tennis match. And by the way, Venus did win last night. And so we're sort of in this rut. And we're at each other's throat. And I'm trying my best. I've been married 58 years, and my wife says if I want to make 59, I got to change my behavior. So I'm working on it, Scott. I'm working on it. But so be a deep sea diver with me for just a few minutes now. And there's this play on words between the deep sea diver and the psalmist in this 139th psalm. And so the psalmist ought to really feel good, because he's at this first level, which is defined or described as the belt of the fishes. So if you turned around right now and looked at the person sitting next to you behind you, that is the belt of the fishes. You are the belt of fishes this morning. So the diver knows when he goes down to this level, it's pretty cool, pretty safe. Ties, shirts, blouses. You all look pretty good, as a matter of fact. And it's pretty safe. There's nothing really required of you. Scott hasn't asked you to give $200,000, which he's going to ask you next week. But right now he hasn't asked you. Things are going pretty well. He's sort of getting into it. He and Session are on the same page now. And things are pretty good. Because this is the belt of the fishes. It's like the new Congress. You remember those big, beautiful pictures of the new Congress? It's the most diverse, more women, more African Americans, more this, more that. How long ago was that? Now they're at each other's throats. I apologize is not in my vocabulary. I'm not apologizing to anybody for anyone. Oh, and by the way, I meant to do that this morning, I forgot. I'm telling you now, I'm taking the fifth. Because I'm going to say something that probably you don't like, and I may not even like it. I may discriminate against somebody. I may something. So I'm apologizing right now, all right? So I'm referring to the fact that I don't think you would like to know me 40 years ago. When I came to the pastor of the First Presbyterian Church, I came from Georgia, from Atlanta, Georgia. And I was pretty hip, I thought. But I was coming to a pastorate not only in New York City, but Brooklyn. And a lot of things were going on, a lot of things were happening. And so I knew I needed to broaden my circle of certainty. And so I had two people, the late Lee Hancock and Fred Davey, who taught me that I needed to really understand the gay and lesbian community if I were going to be a success in that pulpit in New York City. And I said, well, what are you talking about? Why do I need to know all of this? And very shortly I learned, because probably 10% of the congregation that I was coming to was gay and lesbian. So I took the time to understand that community, to know what they were about. I needed to learn how to listen to them and to broaden my base if I were to be a success. And if you want to be successful in this climate of diversity and inclusion, you need to read. One of my clients is American Honda Motors. And so when I started working with them, they had come from a culture in Japan, which is mono. And they needed to know what was going on in this place where they were building a brand new plant just outside of Birmingham, Alabama. So I made as a requirement for them to watch Eyes on the Prize, because that was one of the ways in which they could get grounded in understanding what black culture was like, because it was not like Tokyo. So they needed to understand that. They needed to understand where they were coming, so they would not be afraid, because when you're afraid, you do the wrong thing. You respond out of fear. That's why when she said, you want to make 59, honey, I am practicing. I am practicing my language, my behavior. So, but you get comfortable in the area of the belt of the fishes. I mean, what is there any problem here this morning? We're all nice, we're all dressed, it's pretty warm in here, the weather's cooperating. How could you feel bad going out from here now? That's the area of the belt of the fishes. But if we stay there, who are we? And who do we become? So January, whatever the date was, we introduced this new Democratic Congress. Remember how wonderful that was? And everybody was applauding the diversity, and there were so many women. And wow, in about 2 weeks, Cortez said something, Omar said something, Pelosi said something, and bingo. We were right back where we started from. And so the belt of the fishes, the diver feels a certain amount of comfort in that level. And so the diver understands that if he really wants to be in a true relationship with someone different than he has to move to another level. And that level is called the abyss of darkness. Now let me, Scott, where did I put the water? Oh, I got it, sorry. So the diver wants to go to another level. So, you go to Wikipedia, you see I'm hot stuff. I do a lot of, people know me, Hildy and I write books, I'm halfway good looking and play good tennis, all of that. So I'm feeling pretty good. Plus, I'm very well known. People know me and they applaud me and, that's Dr. Smith. So when I was living in Atlanta, somebody drove into my driveway in a convertible, top down, hair flying all over, put on the brakes, screeched the brakes, and this kid jumps out and asks, "Is my daughter home?" I'm saying, whoa, man. He's white, incidentally. Now, Mr. Diversity expert, Mr. Inclusive, well-known integrating pastor, you're asking for my firstborn? I don't think so. No, I don't think so. So, how quickly I was put to the test. How quickly we are put to the test. And the diver understands that when he goes to the level of the abyss of darkness. So the diver looks back to the area where he just left and he sees the light. He sees the safety. He sees this congregation. He said, I don't know if I'm going to go down there where it's dark because I don't know what's down there. And I'm not sure I want to go down there. So now in my family and Ray's family are nothing but interracial marriages. And so as we begin to understand that there are differences, so learn to embrace it, not fight it. So one of the great expressions, I think it's a great expression, that at that level of the abyss of darkness, I'm trying to be Paul Smith without making it difficult for Hilda to be Hildy. How can I be me without making it difficult for you to be you? That's the test at the level of the abyss of darkness. And so, I have a toy. It's called a Mercedes. That's my toy. And it can get you in trouble if you're an African-American male driving in Atlanta, Georgia. So I've been stopped several times. Where are you going? I'd like to say none of your business, but then I wouldn't be standing here this morning. How long are you going to be here? Did you realize you're swerving? So all of those things are going on. And I'm wondering, well, look, I was in the civil rights movement, I was in Selma, I did all these things, but it makes no difference. So that's the abyss of darkness. And you have to learn how to deal with it, to confront it, to bring yourself to an awareness that there are people who are different than you. And that's what makes the world great. That makes us all. And so, the sociologists talk about the melting pot. What do you get from a melting pot? A big mess. Melted. I prefer the tossed salad. You all are tossed salad this morning. So sometimes the tomato gets it, and sometimes the carrot gets it, and sometimes someone else gets it. So your individuality is exposed, and that's wonderful. You embrace that. So the psalmist is, he's about to panic. So he says, whither shall I go from thy spirit? Or whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I make my bed in hell, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there. God is everywhere. Your God, my God. And so at the level of the abyss of darkness, the diver gets a little nervous. How am I going to adjust to this new pastor here at Lewinsville? How is the session going to take to him? And how, all of those things. And so the diver decides, let me go deeper. Let me go deeper. And so there's a need for us to go deeper. To go deeper and deeper and deeper and discover there that the God of your life and the God of my life has always been there. When your mortgage was due, God was there. When your tuition payment to the University of Maryland was due, God was there and you paid it. You made sure that it was there. God made sure that you had a job. That you got a good report, as the man just said, from his doctor after his stroke. God was there. So all the exercising that he had to, I've had the stroke, so I know a little bit about it. So God made that possible. God is there. God is bigger. Your faith has to be bigger than your fear. I'm a good-looking, great tennis player, and you ought to get to know me. You really ought to get to know me. And I ought to get to know you and not be afraid of your gender or your color or where you came from or where you've been. I don't need to know all of that. That doesn't matter in God's sight. So at the level of the abyss of darkness, the diver and the psalmist begins to say, it's me, O Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my brother, not my sister, not my brother-in-law, but it is me standing in the need of prayer. I am the one who needs to get to confront the fact of my own inadequacies. During this Lenten season, my goal, I started it on Ash Wednesday. I'm working on forgiveness. I need to understand what it means to really forgive. And I thought I really knew, Scott and I have been to seminary. We know all the buzzwords. But when I was in South Africa for the Presbyterian Church, I had the opportunity to attend the Truth and Reconciliation Commission with Bishop Tutu. And I watched with my own eyes the parents of Amy, who was killed by the ANC. I watched her parents face those 4 kids from the ANC. I watched her parents look at them, say, I forgive you. And I wept. I wept when I saw the people in Charleston, South Carolina, having been at a prayer meeting, had their lives snuffed out. And moments later, the people saying, I ain't going to hate you. I'm going to forgive you. Just so easy to do that. Folks, we need to understand that there's so much foolishness going on. And where are we? We're at the safety of the shore. We don't want to take our ship out where the great ones are. And though I keep telling people that I'm in the 4th quarter, and my son-in-law said, yeah, but there's overtime. So in this overtime that I have, I intend to raise as much hell as I can. I intend to do as much as I can, because I will not be trapped by the abyss of darkness. And so Dr. Hildy is going to lead us in a great discussion when we finish here today, as we talk about this so we can then hopefully move away from the abyss of darkness. So what is known as the luminous darkness. The psalmist says, there is neither light, nor darkness, the level of the luminous darkness. It's like I discover in that space the God of Isaac, Sarah, and Jacob. In the luminous darkness, I understand what it means to really be a child of God. In that space, I begin to discover that my love for you has to be your love for me. And as we write in our book, we listen for the sound of the genuine. Sound of the genuine in you that makes you and me really children of God. So I'm on my way to the luminous darkness. I'm on my way to loving everybody. I'm not fearing anyone. I am not afraid to say what's on my mind. And it's also true that I don't have to be right. I just want to be heard. So if you're going to proof text me on my language, go right ahead. I'll love you anyway. There comes a time when, as the diver and the psalmist recognizes that at the level of the luminous darkness, the God of your life, the God of my life, is there. And God is always listening for the sound of the genuine in you. In you. And when you hear the sound of the genuine in Paul, and Paul hears the sound of the genuine in Hildy, that's the music that God heard when God said, "Let there be woman, let there be man." We can do it. We can be that. We can be one. And there are instances all over of oneness. Go there. Go there. Because there is where the diver sees a light that can only be seen when the diver is still. You remember when I was a kid, if my grandmother asked me to be quiet, that didn't mean a thing. When my grandmother said, "Be still, boy," I was still. See, there's a difference. God wants us to be still so we can be genuine. God wants us to be still so we can hear the plaints and the cries. God wants us to be still so we can understand who we are in the presence and in the light of God. So during these 40 days, I'm on my knees every morning asking God to teach me how to forgive. Teach me, God, how to love. Teach me, God, how to be open. Teach me, God, how to be free. And teach me, God, to understand two things about you, God. One, I know when I fall, you're there to catch me. And if you don't catch me when I fall, you'll teach me how to fly. Ask God to teach you how to come to the edge And you will say, it's too high. God calls you again. Come to the edge, Nicole. Come to the edge, Scott. Come to the edge. And you say, no, I might fall. God calls you again. Come to the edge. And you come. And you look over. And God pushes you. And you fly. You fly. Fly, people. Fly.